Wilt Chamberlain was perhaps the most statistically accomplished player in not just basketball, but sports history. Even to the eyes of a non-basketball fan, these numbers look like the result of a professional NBA 2K player operating on rookie difficulty. From a 100-point game without three-pointers, and an entire season averaging 50 points per game, to one of the most awe-inspiring rookie years of all time. There's no question Wilt was an all-time great, but you have to wonder, how much of those stats were inflated by, perhaps, the 144 possessions per game? Now, in no way am I saying Wilt is not an all-time great, but this video is going to be looking at his game in ways that may trigger you, so there's your trigger warning, Wilt Chamberlain fans. So, first I'll explain what I said earlier about possessions. Wilt's stats were boosted in a huge way by the amount of possessions he was given. He was the main route to scoring for his team. The coach's clipboard always consisted of Wilt having the ball, Wilt being down low, Wilt doing everything. If we convert his stats from his best season to per 100 possessions, the average of an NBA star, his stats go down from 50 points, 13 rebounds, to 34 points and 11 rebounds. Still extremely impressive, but not the greatest in NBA history. If we convert his 100-point game, in which he had 204 possessions, to per 100 possessions, it comes out to just 49 points and 15 rebounds. Very impressive, something that could be a career high for most NBA players, but it's also something that James Harden and Damian Lillard do multiple times a season. Another thing we can see about Wilt's stats is they take a huge dip after 1970, and that happens to be the year Calvin Murphy and Nate Archibald were drafted, some of the best defenders of the 20th century. This shows that under good defense, he could not convert, right? And we can attribute some of those big numbers in the years before 1970 to lacking defensive competition. Another thing we can say is that Wilt had a hard time winning the playoffs. He had 2 rings, but Bill Russell had 11 in the same era, and Wilt was arguably the better player. Now, let's look at defense. Wilt Chamberlain was not only known for his offensive ability, but his defensive ability as well. Now, 70 years ago, when Wilt played, there was no counting blocks, and we don't have video evidence of every single one of his games, so there's no way to know how many blocks he had in his career or even per game. But we can make a healthy guess of more than 5, just because of how dominant he was on a defensive end. He was bigger, taller, faster, and more athletic than anyone else, and it showed. But how much of those defensive stats are really real? Offensive players in the 60s and 70s were kind of lacking. They weren't that good, just because the training for them wasn't that great either. And Wilt could easily have gotten easy blocks, easy steals, and could have locked up anyone from that era. Which means, how would that translate to current NBA standards, where everyone is playing like they're Steph Curry, shooting from deep and everything? It wouldn't translate very good. Teams could easily just take advantage of his tall frame and shoot over him. That didn't happen earlier because players weren't skilled enough, but you see where I'm going with this. Anyway, that was a statistical look into Wilt Chamberlain's career. I understand not all of this will be valid, but I hope this helped you understand why I think Wilt Chamberlain may be pretty overrated, especially that record of his that he had with 100 points. Let's look at a couple other ones of his records. 55 rebounds in a game. That is insane, and I'm not even going to try to take that down in any way. So, I'm not saying Wilt Chamberlain is overrated. I'm saying some of his records may be overrated. In fact, if you look at him from his stats and you don't do what I've done, scientifically break them down, he may be the most underrated player in NBA history.